Hey, let us discuss Shadows Linger, book number two in the Black Company series. Yes, the dreaded sequel. There's actually many sequels to this series, and I think it's actually a run that's really worth talking about because I think it is an advance on the first book, which was just simply the Black Company, where we are introduced to this. To this mercenary group that is a brotherhood that has been around for generations upon generations, and they basically, whoever pays them, that's who they fight for. And in this incarnation, they've somewhat fallen on hard times, and end up working for a dark lady, like Dark Lord, a dark lady, and indeed there was a Dark Lord, and this was his one of his consort, I guess. They were all sent down to hell, um, buried in great barrows. But due to some foolishness, the Dark Lady got out, and with her she brought some of the Taken wizards who'd been basically subsumed into the dark into the darkness, kind of get the very much kind of the Nazgul feel of them. um and Nazgul coming from Lord of the Rings, and Lord of the Rings definitely being high fantasy, where it is very much your protagonists are the forces of good, the noble, noble Aragorn, the dwarves, the elves. This is a world very much of men, and very much of the our protagonists are the mercenaries who are putting down the rebel. They are engaged in a dirty kind of guerrilla war, putting down guerrilla warfare. I get a real feeling this is like the first book was like early 80s, and this is like 1984. I get a very much kind of a feeling of kind of like Vietnam, and these are forces who, we're not good. We don't have any illusions that our side is righteous. But we're just getting paid. We're getting paid for what we're doing. There's also a lot of implications, not implications, outright stuff that the rebel, while they might ideologically have a goal, they are also easily fall into doing all the kind of the dirty, brutal things of war. This is very much grim dark. This is I can't remember exactly where George R. R. Martin gets into the game, but this is around the same time you can see this movement of we're getting out of kind of paladin heroes and into the moral grays, probably is a reaction to saying like, oh yes, okay, World War II was very much a war of kind of a good against evil in a way, though there and you cannot just I cannot dispute, there are fucking neo Nazis out there now that would dispute that the Nazi Party was very much the forces of evil in that conflict. But as we've gone on in the world, there's a lot of questioning exactly who are the good guys, who are the bad guys, and whether that is actually a meaningful thing. And that's very much gets explored in the first book, explored through the eyes of the grunts. The narrator in that book and in this book is a fellow named Croker, who is the kind of the physician, the doctor, the guy who's trying to patch together all the grievously wounded people who are going to die because they don't have penicillin or any other antibiotics. And he does what he can do, but he also writes the annals for the Black Company, keeps their history, reminds them of their history. He will read selections from the older annals that his forebears had given. All the soldiers have names like, yeah, it's Croker, Silent, Goblin, One Eye. There's the lieutenant, and there's the captain. And that is all you don't know their actual names. They are simply their nicknames, their functions. It's they being kind of dehumanized that way. There you can see that they've been in the fog of war all this time, and they continue to be like, for decades and decades without what seems not end. They know they're aware of the horror that they are working for, and they get more and more aware of it. There is a weird thing of how Croker's relationship with the lady develops through the Dark Lady develops through this, and Glen Cook very wisely keeps her at a distance, much like the great Saruman, no, Sauron in Lord of the Rings is kept at a distance, and there's that mystery, and there's that awe, and there's that dread, and there's that horrible, horrible fear that happens. And spoiler alert, they some of them at least make it through that first thing, especially Raven and a young deaf mute girl that he rescued from gang rape in the first one from some of their allies, and called Darling, and there's that they abscond by the end of that novel for very particular reasons, which I won't go into because I don't want to spoil that book or this book. But needless to say, that develops. But the great thing about Shadows Linger is that we continue with that storyline, but we also get a new storyline and a new perspective character in a fellow named Shed Marin, a really kind of cowardly innkeeper who is in one of the towns that is has the misfortune of coming under the lady's notice, and that she sends aid to in the form of the Black Company, an advanced thing. But Shed is like constantly in debt to brutal man, always kind of treading water, fearful, cringing. But he has something that they are interested in, his inn. It's a money making thing, and they just want to suck him into debt and then take it away from him. And he's fighting all the ways that he can to get away from this. And he is the great kind of character study in this book of this complete coward who goes into some really, really dark places, like the kind of places where modern time he would be like America's most wanted, someone that you're like, holy crap, I'm like afraid of him by certain points in this book. Yeah, and it continues to develop past that as well. And Cook has a way of actually getting you to winning you back to almost sympathy for the guy. It is just a bravura kind of little arc, little story, self-contained story within this book. And while we're going to continue with the kind of the more overarching story of the Black Company and the fate of Raven, of Darling, of the rest of the company of Croker, all these guys who are getting into their 40s and are like, are we ever going to end? Are we going to ever end this? And and we're trapped with the lady, and like, how is that going to work out if and when we take a walk somewhere else? And can you simply be neutral in this world, or are you have to pick a side? And however, it's not that whenever they do pick a side, it's not like they're going from evil to good. They're going from, there's the great thing in this book is the lady didn't left her the Dark Lord that she was under buried, and he in relative terms was a far greater evil than her. So in some ways, there's a hunk of this book where you're rooting for her to actually triumph because she's going against something even more evil, which is that's really smart author stuff. If you've got a despicable character that is kind of like you and in a lot of ways the Black Company are despicable characters. They're people that you don't want to ask about their past, their past, and even like what they've been doing as soldiers. But you also see that they are actually they're human, and they're trying to kind of do the best that they can do under the circumstances, and you do actually develop a sympathy for them. And you even get that with the lady, who is really messed up, really messed up. You learn a lot in the end of the Black Company itself, how messed up she is, and even in this book, it's just like, but also how dangerous she is. So if you have not tried this series, I totally recommend it. Totally recommend it. It is definitely the writing is kind of very kind of chocolatey, kind of atmospheric, dark, grim stuff. But has a certain kind of, because we're seeing it through Croker's viewpoint for so much of it, and he is sort of somewhat of a, despite himself, somewhat of a romantic. He in ways that get disillusioned, definitely, but he still retains that into a certain degree of kind of like, oh, you know, that kind of infuses the story, which also gives it more of that kind of that just wonderful uh, dark atmosphere without just being kind of what is it? It's like when you get a cinematographer who just makes everything mud colored and it's just all uniform. That's like boring. This is like, no, this is like all the different shadings, and it makes for a rich black and white. It's rich. It's not just black and white. There's all these shades of gray, which I'm really enjoying. Yeah, it's very much a reaction of kind of like the Tolkien-esque ripoff, and that kind of tension, that kind of vibration, that kind of calling back to maybe the pulp writers and their that kind of that language that I kind of really kind of can be somewhat overwrought but also romantic in a way I really enjoy. I think that's why I kind of called up someone like Robert E. Howard, who though was much more kind of straightforward in his moral universe. Still there's something about the running battles, the violence, the brutality, but also just kind of ruthless kind of efficiency of these men doing their jobs that I really enjoy. So yeah, that is Shadows Linger by Glen Cook. More videos later.